Welcome to this week's deep dive. This week we have the ever famous, ever popular Bobby Lehew. Welcome, Bobby.
Hey, Katie, how are you?
Good. So we're actually having this a little bit later than the actual topic, but it kind of ties into an article that you recently posted on for commonsku. And so our topic was sort of promo fails, like how do you adapt, pivot, change? And then your article was sort of on disaster preparation, like how are you addressing, coping with the coronavirus and everything else that's kind of coming through. So we're going to cover it all while not making everyone paranoid about people washing their hands.
Right.
Yeah, so it's one of the things that everyone is coming up a lot, and commonsku actually communicated about this for your events is, we're monitoring the situation, we're being cautious, but we're not canceling yet. And I work on a conference as well, and we're having the same conversation of like, when do we pull the trigger? When do we decide to go ahead? But what we're seeing a lot are that conferences are being canceled, large events are being canceled or postponed, and so there's so much of promo that's tied into that kind of gets affected by this. So how do you suggest to distributors like to adapt and pivot to handing out swag at an event to kind of an open question?
Right. First, I think we should acknowledge that as an industry, we are incredible at pivoting. So when you think about what a distributor does on a regular basis before the crisis erupted, that's all they deal with. And suppliers too, and manufacturers is pivoting towards solutions. Inventory is out, or this product imprint is wrong. And so distributors actually already have a ready-made muscle that they've exercised for years. So I think we need to be confident in that, first of all, that we have this reflexive action built into us to actually come up with alternative solutions. So I don't know, there are folks like me that sort of need to recall that we have that confidence already built into us. So that's a good thing. The conference, another thing about perspective is that in PPAI's report, about 10% of the overall industry revenue, which is significant, is tied up in events. Now I say that knowing full well, Kate, that I'm talking to you and a lot of your awards, it could be 80% of your business. So there are folks that certainly have reason for concern. One of the things that I wrote about in the article and that we talk about a lot is that the purpose of the promotion still exists. So the event might be canceled, but what the customer was doing is still needs to be doing. They still need to be doing that. Yeah. So whether it's celebrating successes, for example, awards. We had an award program. It was a $150,000 crystal award program, and we shipped awards to the recipients. They had kind of mock awards handed out at the physical event, but we still shipped items to the customer. There's freight revenue involved. There's kitting revenue involved. There's all kinds of great revenue involved. So a lot of for like our events, we need to remember 10% of the industry for the most part, and for those that are dealing with canceled events, the purpose still exists. Like I said, celebrating successes. It might be that they're introducing new services. They're gathering together for a reason. There are so many great suppliers. Pierre Chameleon Like is one of them that are doing these wonderful kits that you can send out. So it's time to work with our clients on readdressing the purpose of the conference. Was it inspiration? If so, let's build an inspiration kit for attendees. If it's the awards program, let's think of ways that we can actually celebrate these awards and still get these in the hands of recipients. So a lot of pivoting needs to be turned toward purpose and reminding ourselves and our customer, because our customer sort of has the promo professional in a need to know basis, right? They'll be like, the event was canceled, let's cancel the promotions. And we sort of have to push our way a little bit into the conversation of, all right, but I want to be a part of the solution here. What can we do to help redeem this situation for you and your brand? You were gathering together for a reason. What were those purposes? And let's think about how we can reframe this entire project to still accomplish your organization's goals.
And it's so true, because the point of promo is to send and share a message. So that message hasn't changed. That need to send and share a message hasn't changed. It's just now the delivery needs to change. And
absolutely.
And I always think of like, it was this thing came up on like a business group that I'm on Facebook because it's not just conferences and awards that you kind of have to be aware of. It's the process that you're sending that message. So it was one of this company had bought these cubes with the message on it, with intending that everyone like pose with it, pass it around. So like, you've done a good thing, you get this cube, and that cube now goes on. And now all of a sudden you're like, oh, now we're just sending around things like physical artifacts in a viral situation. And it's like, okay, well, now you just have to change the message of that. So they were meant to be shared. So now you just pivot it to its point of recognition. So this thankfully wasn't my project, but it is kind of, okay, so it started as you have to be creative enough. If you're selling yourself as a creative person, then you're going to be creative enough to pivot.
And it's about reframing. It's all about reframing. You know, those interrogative pronouns, who, what, when, where, why, and how, will unlock your creativity in such a great way. That's where we need to get back to. What was the purpose of the promotion? Let's readdress that. Another thing to remember too, these budgets can be shifted to other things. So the event itself might be canceled, but there are other ways outside of an event, outside of shipping things to them, that we can do in a later project that might help celebrate this or whatever it was we were doing. Imported orders are very similar in this regard. Another way of reframing the challenge. You know, John Vo delivered at SKU Camp last fall a great talk on his creative process. And he's one of the most creative distributors in the business. And Google is one of his clients. But for one particular project, he had an imported order where the customer wanted 1,000 units to be given as VIP gifts at Coachella. And it was going to be a multi-color imprint. It was going to be imported order. And they were having trouble actually meeting the specs with the requirements that the customer wanted. So what John suggested, which was a wild suggestion instead, was, and this John, the way John is, was that how about we increase the budget 6 times, but reduce the quantity down to 50. And so what he did was he created this incredible exclusive experience with 50 units as opposed to what they were thinking with 1,000. So again, it's about reframing. How do we approach this problem differently? You know, how do we approach this quantity differently? How do we approach the end goal of the customer? In this case, what John had his mind around really well was the end goal of the customer. He knew the customer wanted to create FOMO and an exclusive experience reserved only for VIPs. Mm-hmm. So he just actually took it even further than the client expected, and it was an incredible success. So again, going back to what our industry does incredibly well, we already have this muscle built in. We pivot all the time. It's just, and it may require a little more teamwork than usual to come up with some of these ideas.
And a little more thinking out of the box. So it's, you were going to go to a conference or trade show and give away 1,000 items at $2 each. Well, start a campaign where people can get an item and make it like 100 pieces at $20 each, and kind of play with it that way. And
I don't mean to sound glib or insincere about the real panic that's happening, but I'm just trying to help us all remember that the organization still has these goals. The goal itself didn't, dissipate with the event, didn't disappear with the event. It's still there.
And that's the kind of tough part right now, is that there's this communication going on about coronavirus where you want to be cautious. You want to be aware of how everyone is. Sure. And when it gets down to it, is you want to make sure your employees are happy, safe, and not scared, and aware of like compassion. And but at the same time is that you don't want to be so cautious that you cancel business, that you cancel plans, that you kind of pull yourself way farther back on your momentum than you ever were. So it's a tough line to kind of go on that. And you want to make it about the people, but again, like, people still have a job.
This is where some really tough decisions are obviously being made all over businesses right now. And I think the difference is in reacting and responding. And I know that's a trite, overused phrase, but it's so true in our business because we're in a very reactive business. And often we don't get a chance to respond because we're so busy reacting to situations, and reacting puts us in a defensive mode as opposed to an offensive mode. But like leadership is a great example. This is a time for us as an industry to recognize the power of promotional energy and what it can do on behalf of a brand and a company and a recipient, and remember that and go in with that conviction with those kinds of ideas. Also, as leaders, this is a challenge. This, Kate, with your team. It's a very difficult time for many in terms of worrisome. Everything, it's on top of everybody's mind. When I ran a distributorship for years, we were in a market that had a volatile weather pattern. So every spring we were dodging tornadoes. Every winter we were dealing with ice. And there were some team members that were petrified, and there were some team members, that were cavalier about it. And you had both of those extremes exist under one roof. And so you have to, lead with compassion, but also remember that we do have to lead, right? We just can't follow pandemonium and panic, both not only on the leadership side, but also as an industry.
Yeah. And that is tough. Like, you had a great, for the article you wrote, which I highly suggest people check out, is just about that. It's like, be really respectful of people's feelings and emotions.
Yeah.
And again, that lead with compassion is that, that person may not have an issue with coming in, but another person is really concerned about, because so much is unknown. Like, they live in that uncertainty. And
right.
Yeah.
One other thought that just occurred to me, we had this on the SKUcast, we had the Decade Ahead series that were recorded with David Nicholson of PCNA, with Jonathan Isaacson of Gemline. We had Tim Andrews, Paul Bellantone on the same conversation, Mark and I and Jamie Mayer on one conversation. One of the comments that I remember, and I can't remember who said it. It might have been Jonathan Isaacson. Sounds like the kind of thing he would say, or David Nicholson, either one. But they also encouraged us in a leadership role, or everyone to think through this situation. I asked them what the distinction they thought would be a difference between the recession we could possibly face versus the recession that we had. And one of the great insights that they talked about was thinking through this problem, not just at this problem, but what's it going to look like on the other side of this? Because we are going to get on the other side of this. And how are we going to emerge as a business different? How are we going to emerge on behalf of our clients different? How are we going to come across as more consultative and helpful to our customers? So I think thinking through the problem and seeing to the other side is a big part of that leadership aspect. Yeah. I don't know that I'm making any sense at all, Kate.
Oh, no, you completely do. I think the problem is right now is that because so much is unknown, we all want to be proactive and do something and react. And unfortunately, we're in this situation where a lot is unknown. So you can't be reactionary, but what you do now really establishes your future. So do you, like, it's one of those, like, you're planning, you're strategic. If you were smart, you already have a plan in hand for this, or you're like taking it a day at a time, kind of being prepared. So what you said makes total sense, and sort of, this is not going to be forever, but it's going to define you for at least the future, almost future, near future, well into the future. How paranoid should we be here, Bobby?
I know. I don't want to answer that question.
Yeah.
There are smarter minds than me working on that one, but yeah.
Got it. Should we get them on here? Should we?
Yeah, definitely should have had someone else on here, Kate.
Okay, well, I'll go make a call.
Yeah, you should do that.
But yeah, so, and your article was great in that way, sort of covering everything, because it's the same, how you react to things is the same on, you're dealing with a global pandemic, to an order's gone wrong and your client's really upset, and it's not a big thing for you, but it's a big thing for them. So how do you react that way? Or your prom will fail, and like, what do you do to communicate? What do you do to sort of solve it? And it's difficult, and finding your right footing on things can be defining of who you are, hopefully.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So what would be your suggestion for sort of communicating plans to clients and customers and preparing them without being reactionary, but reactive?
It's very important for us to remember a couple of things. Number one, be clear, concise, and consistent in your communication with your team members as well as clients. Also, don't forget, Harvey Mackey with Whole Foods has this great stakeholders diagram where he shows that in our businesses, we have multiple stakeholders. We don't have just our clients and our employees, which is what we think of as stakeholders. In this business in particular, our supplier partners are vital, important partnership for us. So you have supplier partners, you have investors, you have clients, you have employees, you have the community. Some of us do direct work in the community, and all of those folks we should be communicating regularly. There's a temptation not to communicate when things like this because you don't know anything. But be very upfront with communication and be very consistent with communication. Otherwise, the rumor mill is going to take over the communication for you. So I think it's really important, no matter how small you are, no matter how big you are, that you can communicate clearly about what the business is doing right now, what they think in terms of positive leadership and the concerns that they have. Stripe had this put on their website They communicated to all their employees about working from home. You know, they actually had required some offices, depending on location, to work from home. Others, they highly encouraged it. And I thought it was a really compassionate response, but also a very fast response. It's one of the fastest responses I've seen. So I think communicating that, it's also a great time to communicate with clients, to talk with them about not just event promotions, because we know event promotions are just 10% of what we do for the most part. But to communicate with them about some of the upcoming challenges, you know, down the road. What can we do? And clients are going to be so busy right now. It's going to be so hard to get in with them and visit with them. But it is imperative that we visit about other projects that are coming up so that we have enough time to prepare. I know it's easier said than done, but it's time to look at your order history from last year, looking at second, third, and fourth quarters, seeing what you did, seeing what projects are going to require immediate attention, and also just getting with your top 10 customers to talk about organizational goals overall that might be hindered or hampered by this, and how you can use the power of promotional energy to help augment, you know, a return to that. So.
Yeah, no, I'm thinking of this time in terms of lists, like start making, and you keep seeing with everyone is like you sort of suggest like make a list of your domestic suppliers, make a list of your upcoming events, and make a list of the clients that you now have to tell, like, okay, if we're ordering this, our production time is now gone from this amount of time to this much more time. And a lot of preparedness needs to happen. So it's alarming, but we have calm voices like you on our side, Bobby.
Okay. Thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it. You know how hard this is for me, by the way. You know how hard it is for me to do videos. So, you know, you're trying to get me to stay on a little longer. And I'm like, you know.
A little bit. But see, this is now the future of communication. You have to get used to this. Like we're all telecommuting now.
You're exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah, you just have to remember to stay dressed, brush your hair, and you're all set for the day. Oh, and wash your hands and go touch your face.
Yeah, there you go.
Just all the common things. So Bobby, where can we find you on the internet? Because that's where you're going to live right now.
Yeah, you can find me at Bobby Lehew, BobbyLehew, or mostly what's more important is you can find me at commonsku.
Yeah, definitely. Wonderful. And everyone remember to join us every week for Promo Chat, Wednesday at 3 p.m., noon Pacific. And thank you to our sponsors, Maple Ridge Farms, who's making this happen. Okay, take care.
Awesome.
Bye, Bobby.
Thanks. All right, take care.